All right, welcome everyone. My name's E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. Tonight, of course, we are not physically together at Charis, though I wish we were. We are coming to you from all over the country to celebrate Body Talk. 37 voices explore our radical anatomy. I'm here tonight with Kelly Jensen, who is the amazing editor of this book, and with Amy Pence-Brown, who is going to be our moderator tonight. We're also joined by five amazing contributors and voices who you're definitely going to recognize when we start pulling them up. We're going to be doing a little bit of a round robin on a topic that we know is very close to our hearts. I'll let them tell you more about that. But before I get out of the way, I want to make sure that you know that you can buy Body Talk tonight by clicking that teal button at the bottom of your screen. That buys it directly from Charis. You also can look just under there. You see Ask a Question, and that is where you're going to put any questions that you want to ask our panelists. You can be specific about who you're addressing your question to. So just say, that you want to address a question to Katie or to Nick or whomever. Put it in there, or you can ask a general question to all the panelists, and we'll try to work them in. Amy has written a lot of really great questions, so your question may actually get answered. You can also say where you're watching from in the chat. You can share your own anatomy stories if you want in the chat. A reminder at the top is our code of conduct, so please just read that before you start commenting. But otherwise, we really welcome you to get in here and join us. So we're going to be doing some technological switching in and out. So please bear with us. We want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard tonight. So without further ado, please welcome Kelly and Amy. Thanks so much.
Hi, thanks for having us. And thanks for asking me to moderate this event tonight. We're here, of course, to talk about Body Talk. Here it is, right here. The new book by Kelly Jensen with several of the writers and a few body liberation activists like myself. And specifically, we're here to talk about boobs, breasts, bazongas, chests, tatas, titties, whatever you call them. We all got them. And their meanings, usage, and our feelings about them as a very sort of controversial body part. And we have about an hour to talk about them. And I'll be guiding the conversation with these 6 folks and taking your questions, hopefully at the end or on the side here. So feel free to pop those in as we heard earlier and send them our way. My name is Amy Pence-Brown, and I have been a body image scholar and an activist for the past 11 years, and I often use my body as a political vessel and a canvas for my work. Notably, probably what people most know me for is in 2015, it's been almost 5 years ago exactly, I stripped down to a black bikini with a blindfold and a sign and markers at a farmer's market downtown Boise, Idaho, in the name of radical self-acceptance. And a video of the performance, along with a blog post I wrote, went viral to the tune of over 200 million views to date. I do a lot of work as a fat feminist mother and gained international attention specifically for that stand. And I continue to fight for self-love and body positivity as a writer, artist, public speaker, educator, and leader of the Boise Rad Fat Collective. And I'm founder of Rad Camp, a body positive boot camp for feminists and feminist teens, and Be Rad, Be You, a body image workshop for girls ages 10 to 12. And that's actually how I met Kelly. I used her, one of her first books, Here We Are, Feminism for the Real World, as a book for my Rad Camp for teens. And I like to give them books. And I gave them her book, and I tagged her on Instagram. And she was so thrilled to hear that I used the book, that she and her publisher gave me copies for all of the girls to take home themselves one year. And then Kelly flew out to Idaho from Chicago to meet with the girls and talk about the book, and also teach us some body positive yoga. And I'm thrilled to be actually listed in this new book as well in the back as a rad activist, a fat positive activist to follow. And about the book, speaking of that, we all experience a world and a body, right? And we don't usually take the time to explore what it really means to have and live within one. And just as every person has a unique personality, every person has a unique body, and every body tells its own story. And in Body Talk, there are 37 writers, models, actors, musicians, and artists who share essays, lists, comics, and illustrations about everything from size and shape to scoliosis, from eating disorders to cancer, from sexuality and gender identity to the use of makeup as armor. And together they contribute a very broad variety and perspectives on what it's like to live in their particular bodies and how their bodies have helped inform who they are and how they move through the world. Kelly, who you see here, is a former librarian and a current editor at Book Riot and her own popular book blog, Stacked. She's the editor of 2 highly acclaimed young adult anthologies. One I mentioned already, Here We Are, Feminism for the Real World, and Don't Call Me Crazy, 33 Voices Start the Conversation About Mental Health, in addition to Body Talk. Her writing has been featured in Bust Magazine, Fortune, Bustle, and more. And when not working with words, she teaches yoga, hangs out with a motley crew of pets, and enjoys all the black licorice no one else wants. We have a few other people off screen that are going to pop on here to join us, including Nic Stone, who is an Atlanta native and a Spelman College graduate. Her debut novel for young adults, Dear Martin, and her debut middle grade novel, Clean Getaway, were both New York Times bestsellers. She's also the author of Odd One Out, a novel about discovering oneself and who it is okay to love, which was an NPR Best Book of the Year and a Rainbow Book List Top 10 selection. Jackpot, a lovish story that takes a searing look at economic inequality, and Shuri, a Black Panther novel based on the much-loved character from the Black Panther comics and film. Dear Justice, the sequel to Dear Martin, will be published in September next month in 2020. Nic lives in Atlanta with her family. Jerlyn Thomas is also joining us, VP Product Design and Design Director, creating rich, attention-grabbing digital experiences that amplify human purpose by concentrating on inclusivity and design accessibility for her advertising agency in New York City. Her passion is bridging the gap between technology and art to communicate with diverse demographics. She's a digital consultant, a mentor for numerous STEM groups, a speaker, and a published illustrator. Her illustrations have been seen on Vice.com, ESPN, and in various anthologies and children's books. She is also an author of her first book, Blacks in Portraits. She's also an ultramarathon runner and triathlete. She's fast, agile, and knows the value of training and discipline, and running resonates in every aspect of her life. She's from Dominica, the nature island of the Caribbean, and grew up in St. Croix, a U.S. Virgin Island. And she currently lives with her husband in the Bronx and trains for the biggest race of her life, being a mom. And I hear you on that. We also have Ady Del Valle, a model, co-author, speaker, and advocate, joining us tonight, along with Julie Murphy, who lives in North Texas with her husband, who loves her. Her dog, who adores her. After several wonderful years in the library world, Julie now writes full-time. And she is also the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the novels Dumplin', now a film on Netflix, which I love, Puddin', Ramona Blue, Side Effects May Vary, and Dear Sweet Pea. Faith Taking Flight, a coming-of-age origin story of a fan favorite superhero, is her latest release. And finally, Kati Gardner is also here tonight, a recovering actor, wife, and mom. She is a childhood cancer survivor and amputee who writes books about disability and kissing. Originally from Atlanta, she now lives and writes in Raleigh, North Carolina. She is the author of Brave Enough and the forthcoming book, also out next month in September 2020, called Finding Balance. We're so glad to have all of you here, and I have some fun questions about boobs specifically for all of you. But first, I wanted to ask of Kelly, as the editor and the organizer of all of this with Charis Books, why did you want to bring us all here to talk about boobs today?
Well, there's a short answer and a long answer, and I'm echoing, so I'm going to take. So.
We're waiting for you to read.
There you are. Am I working now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I grew up with big boobs, like giant boobs, and I never knew how to talk about them. I never knew how to talk about boobs with anybody. And I had so many struggles that seemed like they should have had easy solutions growing up. So I played sports in high school. I could never find a bra that fit. So I would double up on cheap bras. It didn't work. It was uncomfortable, but there weren't other choices. You know, you're 16, and this is in the time before there were internet options. This is a time before I even had a credit card that I could do anything with. So I spent a lot of time just like so alone in my body, and particularly with giant boobs. Like, there are a lot of challenges with them. As I got older and older and older, learned way more about boobs broadly, and learned way more about how to fit my own bras, how to talk about my boobs, how to navigate being active with big boobs. And I always wished that I had these sorts of resources growing up. So I wanted to bring together some of my favorite body positive folks to talk about boobs, because we don't get to talk about our tits often enough, and don't get the chance to do so in a space that is open, welcoming, accepting, and eager to talk about them.
Yes, we could definitely talk about them all day long. Unfortunately, we don't have long. I feel like I'm echoing now too. Do I sound okay to you? Oh. Kelly, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Are you?
Yeah. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
I'm on mute.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, good. Good. And if we want to, I can ask this question and then we can bring people in after I ask the question. Kelly, you could answer first if you want, if you're still in the room. And I'll be glad to pop out of the room, and we'll let some of these people I introduced come on and answer this question. But one thing we wanted to talk about, or I wanted to ask about and preface here, is that as a mom myself, it's especially important for me to teach my kids to speak accurately and neutrally, if not positively, about their body parts. And I have correctly taught them the difference between vulva and vagina, for example. And I usually use the word breasts or boobs and nipples for the chest area. Personally, I like using the word tits to describe mine, as it feels more gritty and sexy and powerful. The words I use, though, depend on context, of course, and audience, I guess, right? So really quickly, I would love to go around the room, and as I've introduced all these amazing people, and have them pop in and share their favorite word or name or nickname for boobs, or their least favorite, or the funniest or weirdest they've ever heard, like tits, breasts, tatas, personal pet names. You can also tell us why, if you wish. Everyone has about a minute or so to give us their favorite name.
So I love tits. I love it because you could use it in so many different contexts and for so many different purposes. So I love a word that's multifaceted like that. I am not a fan of tatas, and that is because that phrase has gotten so wrapped up in breast cancer awareness in a way that is less about actually the people struggling with breast cancer and more about the physical body part. And it feels dehumanizing to me in that context. I understand where other people would love it. For me, it's like just brings up not great feelings.
Good. Does anyone else want to come on and answer? While we're waiting for somebody else to pop on, it looks like Julie.
Hi.
If any of you out there have your favorite or least favorite word for breasts or chest, pop it into the comment bar over here on the side. Julie, go ahead. What do you say?
I'm very childish. So I think that if you saw me online today, my favorite word is boobies. I don't know. everyone takes boob so seriously, and I like that that's just like there's something very fart joke about the word boobies. And that's not a very great or wonderful explanation, but boobies.
That's a good one. I have a 4-year-old, and he loves my boobies, and he calls his dad's pectorals chesties, which is real fun. I like titties personally. That's my favorite. And then mine are, the left one is Lauren, and the right one is Rosalind. They're named for friends of mine from when I was in my early 20s. So Lauren and Rosalind, and yeah.
Oh, am I next?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think I'm the same as a guy. I mean, at the age I'm at now, at the point I'm at now, I don't mind any. I don't mind tits, breasts, or whatever. I think the only word I don't like is like jugs or chungas or whatever. I mean, like it just sounds like a little demeaning to me, at least. But I don't mind any word that, like, you know, that most of us don't mind, or, you know, label them as.
I think my favorite word is tits. I'm also gritty. I love boobs also. Kind of boring sometimes, but I use breasts when I'm speaking to just random people. But we don't use bosom a lot enough. I love like the kind of old school terms once in a while.
Yeah, I think bosom is great, and we should definitely use that more often. I tend to use breast just because it's just easy. I grew up in a very medicalized world, and so that's what I heard, and so that's kind of just what I have continued to use. I do like tits, though. I was thinking about this a lot earlier today, and that's a good word. Yeah, I just need to use it more often.
Tits makes me feel like I'm like wearing like a Budweiser t-shirt. Like I like it.
You know,
Yeah,
it's good.
It's nice and gritty. I like it. I think you're right.
titties is just so like Black community. Like I don't know many Black people that don't call them titties, and so
True.
it's just how we roll.
That's true.
Those are great answers. I like all the diversity there. I like the people on the side here who've popped in. Somebody, Rose, calls, there's the ladies. Melissa's 18th month old calls them boo-boos, specifically around nursing. And in Cockney rhyming slang, Zoe says, they're known as Bristols because titties equal Bristol City, which I'm not familiar with, but I like that. Good. Well, my next question is a little bit lengthier. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a mother, and I'm also a middle-aged cisgender white woman and feminist. As a fat girl and a woman, now a fat woman, I began developing my breasts fairly early at the age of 11. And I was one of the first girls to wear a bra in my 4th grade class. Boys snapped it all the time, and I was mortified. And so my mom forced me to wear it to school, and I would go in the elementary school bathroom before school and take it off every day and hide it in my backpack and then put it back on before I went home. And interestingly, now I'm sort of anti-bra. I hate underwire. I haven't worn a bra the entire quarantine, so for the last 6 months, and I don't envision that I will again. My boobs have gotten bigger and saggier the older I've gotten, and as I have had and nursed more babies. I'm currently about a C cup. I'm 44 years old, and I have 3 kids now. And I'm going through perimenopause, which has changed them also. So my relationship with my tits is a good one, though. I have to say I love them. I love them. So going around the room, we can start with whoever wants to start. If each of you want to share for about 5 minutes or less, your own boob story or your own boob history. Like, what was your first thoughts about them as a young person? Or how have they or your ideas about them changed over time? Do they provide you pleasure or pain? Would you say you have a positive or negative relationship with that body part? We can start with Julie if you want to start.
Lovely. Boobs first. So I think that in the plus size community, there's this idea of the ideal plus size woman, and she's very voluptuous. She's got like big tits, a big ass, and like this like hourglass figure. And I have always been fat. Like since I came out of the womb, there was not a moment when I wasn't larger than all the other kids my age. And there was never a time that I like had that like ideal figure. Like I remember from a very young age, like the thing about my body that protruded the most was my tummy. Like it was like a little pot belly. And so I remember really being jealous of everyone growing up around me that was getting boobs, and like the thing that like that I had like jiggling was my stomach, and I didn't have the same like giant boobs that like some of my best friends did in like middle school and even high school, and even now like my boobs are so small. And I remember like feeling immense shame when my friends would talk about gaining weight, and they'd be like, well, at least my boobs got bigger. And like even as my weight fluctuated, like it's just always been the itty bitty titty committee over here. So it's never I don't know, I've always had this very like almost distant relationship with my boobs, just because they're not a thing that I have to think about every day in the same way that someone who's a D cup or like a F cup or something like that does. Like I don't have to think about the mechanics of my boobs. Like I could probably just like wear an undershirt and people would think I was wearing a bra. And like, you know, like Amy said, like I don't wear underwear. I refuse to wear underwear. I do wear underwear sometimes. It's fine if you don't. You got to air things out. I'm turning into my grandmother. My grandmother always aired it out on Wednesdays. This has nothing to do with boobs, but she would air it out on Wednesdays. And on Wednesdays, if she needed something from the store, she wouldn't go in the store because she didn't have underwear on, and like anything could happen in the store. So she would pull up to McDonald's and have us run inside and like steal creamer or like spoons or like whatever she might need from the little McDonald's kiosk. Anyways, that has nothing to do with boobs. But yeah, my boobs have always just been this sort of like, they were this shameful thing for a while, and now I just feel really neutral about them, and that's kind of the best way to think about them for me. Like that's, yeah.
Good, thank you. Nic, what about you?
So I, by the time I was 14, I was a D cup, but I had these like little chicken legs. So it was like this stick figure with the two circles drawn on the chest area. And I remember I was like, I was a cheerleader. I had to wear 3 sports bras, etc. Like I always had very big boobs. And unfortunately, in like the late 90s, that was not a good thing to be, you know, a girl with giant boobs in middle school and high school, because boys are assholes and they're not kind. So I had, let's see, I was a double D by the time I had my first kid. Then I went up to like a G, and then I had another kid. I nursed 2 kids. By the time I finished nursing my second kid, I was an H cup. And I actually got a reduction last year. And now I don't wear a bra either, and it's magic. So now I'm like a triple D, but I have gotten to a place now where I don't hate them. Like I spent most of my life feeling like they took attention away from my face, because that was an experience when I was younger. And I also think that, I don't know, there's so much, the fact that boobs are a body part that are so heavily sexualized is something that has bothered me for a really long time, because like I feed my kids with them, right? So even the idea of discomfort with the size because I felt like they drew too much attention. I had a bit of a rocky relationship with them until I got them reduced down to the size that I want them to be. And now I love them. They're great. They've done some amazing things, and I'm actually able to appreciate them.
Thank you. Ady, what about you?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of interesting story. I think I started probably getting a little chubbier around like when I was 12 or like 11. And I noticed maybe around 15-ish, my chest was a little larger than the other kids or my cousins or whatever around me. And I think like in my late teens and like early 20s, I used to hate my body. I used to hate my chest. I used to bind them. I used to tell my mom to buy the man girdles or whatever because they were, out there. Like every time I would go down the stairs, I can see them like jiggling and jiggling. So I would hate it because I'm like, why are they so big? Like I shouldn't have, a chest so big. But I've always been a chubby kid, till right now. And like, I think about 5 years ago, I started kind of like self-reflecting, as taking a step back on myself and just like realizing like this is a part of me and kind of like slowly embracing myself. I think I started more when I started modeling and like seeing other, people, like especially like women, because women are a big inspiration into why I got into, what I am. And I see them doing that. I'm like, I want to do that, but like, for myself and for the guys so they can love themselves too. So I slowly started like embracing myself and like, taking my shirt off at the beach and stop binding my chest. And I think it was like people really, at the end of the day, I think when you get older, sometimes people don't care, but you still get those like, comments or looks or whatever. Like I've gone to like the club or something and people will unsolicitedly would tap my boob like randomly, like, cause they, they're just out there, and as a guy, I think people just are like, are those real or whatever? Are they fake or whatever? And I'm like, no, they're mine, and you don't need to touch them or whatever. But I think like myself and a lot of people learn to appreciate the different shapes that we all come in, and I learned to love my boobs like probably more now than ever. And it's something, I probably wouldn't change. It's just a part of who I am.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Jerlyn,
Hi.
tell us some of your story.
So I remember just never wanting them, and I got them pretty early. And just like Nic, I was super skinny with like huge boobs, and I didn't want them because I was 10 years old and playing with the guys. And as soon as I started having them, they realized I was not one of the boys anymore, and that was devastating. So instead of like focusing on like shooting, because we used to play basketball a lot, they will pay attention to my boobs now. So now it's different. No, now it's no longer part of the crew. And I remember having these girlfriends who started developing more like bigger boobs than I did. And I kept telling my grandmother, because I lived with her, like, I really need a bra. And she's like, you don't need a bra, you're fine. And I was taking sewing classes, so I made myself this bra that's really, really tight to bind them, to kind of like hide them. And my grandmother saw it for my shirt, and she told my mom, you need to get this girl a bra. So that went on my adventure of wearing a bra, which probably wasn't the right size. Like a lot of us women do, we wear the wrong bra size. I mean, it was not until I was much older that I went to get fitted and got a really nice fitted bra. But in high school, I remember still hating them, still too big. But one summer, I lived with Italian family, and of course, if you know Italian culture, it has lots of pasta, and I gained 17 pounds that summer, and I basically filled out. And in my culture, in the Caribbean, the women who get attention are usually the ones with bigger butts. So no one cared about my boobs, but when I gained that 17 pounds, I kind of filled out. So definitely all the guys found me more attractive. So that was my high school experience, but they still felt like they got in the way, and I still hated them. Went up to college, still hated them. And I discovered marathons after I graduated, started running, and realized that they started disappearing. So I kept running more and more to get rid of my boobs. But at that time, I was kind of embracing like confidence in my body and whatever it was doing, making myself strong. So my boobs became an afterthought. But I mean, like even when dating, like guys would always say like, are they more into the girls with butts? Are they more girls with boobs? Like it didn't matter. I always avoided the guys who were like that. And so still going through the process, like for college, post college, and then I'm finally meeting my husband, and he's like, doesn't care about that. He's also a fellow runner, and my boobs was never the central thought. But one day when I went to the doctor to get a checkup, and of course, like we're all aware of breast cancer awareness, and And my doctor was like, have you ever felt these lumps before? And I was like, oh my God. No, so now my boobs are back in focus. And I thought they were okay. So I had a biopsy. Thankfully, everything was fine. But again, it was central focus. And now I had to realize I had to discover my body, like make sure that I'm paying attention to it. And my boobs are part of it, although I was trying to ignore it. And as I mentioned before, I'm a new mom. And the most amazing experience I had this year, because my daughter, she's 6 months old. I didn't know, like for people who don't experience it, hopefully I can explain it well, but I never thought my body could actually produce anything to sustain life. And that was the most amazing experience ever. And like shocking, like nature does that. And I gave birth in February, way before this pandemic happened. And I remember 2 days of not producing anything. And I was so scared. I saw 5 lactation consultants, and they were each giving me advice. And I was like, oh no, I'm probably gonna be one of these moms who never experienced it. But I was like, you know what? That's okay. Like I was ready for that. Like if I never produced. But one day my baby cried, and all of a sudden I'm producing milk everywhere. And it was just so fascinating. It's crazy. And like I shared this story with some of my friends. I was like, I'm walking around the house and there's milk everywhere. So yeah, I'm going on this like crazy journey with my boobs, like not wanting them, and just like them getting in the way. And now just appreciated that I can share this with my daughter, and knowing that it's okay if certain things doesn't happen for me. And now waiting for the other chapter, which might be when she's no longer breastfeeding and I can just go back to my breast size, hopefully. But that's okay too. Like if they sag or not, oh, don't. But I'll have to say, I wish I was like you guys, not wearing any bra. I'm still trying to get used to that. But thankfully, no one had to see it when I put one on today, and it's not fitted.
Thank you. I relate to that story a lot as well. It's a complicated journey and a long one. The longer you're alive, right?
Yeah.
With all of your
so complicated.
Yes, keeps changing. Thank you. Katie, what about you?
Oh, boobs. So I finished chemotherapy when I was 10. So about the time that a lot of girls are starting to enter puberty. And I was delayed a little bit in that aspect. So I didn't really hit puberty till I was like 13. So I went from having no boobs to having double Ds by the time I was in like 9th grade. So they came, and they came fast. And I walk on crutches. I don't use a prosthesis. So walking on crutches, like my chest was always first when I would take a step. And so it was like, people would be like, oh, she has one leg. Oh, she has boobs. Like that was that. And then they might see my face later, maybe. So that was always kind of the way I entered a room. I remember like at the beginning of puberty being like, ooh, boobs, that's cool. Maybe I'll have some. That'll be awesome. I did not want the double Ds that I ended up with in high school. And currently I rock out at an H. So because I've given birth twice, I have 2 babies, and I've gained weight, and it always goes to my boobs and other areas. But if I'm going to gain weight, it's definitely going to end up in my boobs, and it never leaves. So if I lose any of that weight for whatever reason, it's still there. So I still am going to be in an H cup regardless. I had very complicated feelings about my breasts because they were not able to nourish my children. And I was like, why do I have these ginormous boobs if they're not going to do anything? Like it was so debilitating at times. My oldest was a NICU baby. She was born early, and we had to spend some time in the NICU. And so I was learning how to nurse and how to breastfeed on a pump, which is like the most sterile, and like I still get like, I kind of twitch if I hear a pump, if I hear a nursing pump come on. It's got a very particular sound, and I kind of do like this because I was setting an alarm to wake up every 2 hours to try to pump for this teeny tiny little baby in the NICU who started middle school this week. She's fine. I was not okay with it. I was the one that was having a really hard time with this because she was born early, and I felt like it was my fault that she was born early, and then my boobs didn't work. And it was terrible. And so with my second, she's 4 years old or younger than her sister. With my second kid, I was like, okay, I'm going to really try. I'm going to have my pump early. I'm going to meet with all of the lactation consultants. I'm going to do all of the homework. I'm going to have lactation cookies. I'm going to have that beer that everybody tells you to drink. Like, I'm going to do all of it. I'm going to nurse as soon as this kid is brought out of my body. And I have a heart condition, so they have to be really careful whenever I deliver. And so I have to have very controlled deliveries. And so I had a C-section. And typically you don't get your baby right away after you have a C-section. It takes a little bit of time. And I was like, no, I will have her immediately. And, we did all of the things, and I still sucked at it. We still were not able to do it. My boobs still never produced enough. And I remember having these panic and anxiety dreams at night, which is just what you want to have when you're a new mom, about not being able to feed my kid. And then I remember I woke up the next morning after not really sleeping and going, there's formula and that's okay. And that was like a lovely realization. Like, I had done everything I could to try to nurse these children, but it's okay. I still have very complicated feelings about my boobs because they get in the way when I'm walking, and they're heavy, and I have one leg, and so I'm carrying all of the weight on one leg. And I, the opposite of all of you guys, I almost never don't have on a bra because they are so big. I have to wear one all the time. Otherwise my back hurts more and things like that. So I have sleep bras. I have old nursing tanks that, even though I didn't even nurse well to begin with, that I still sleep in at night. Because otherwise my boobs end up in my face and I smother at night in my sleep. And that is a real thing for me. So I have complicated feelings, but I'm working towards a better relationship with them.
I love how different everyone's stories are. And I love, that's what I was saying to Kelly, is we could talk about this forever because they're so complicated and there's such great things to explore. Speaking of Kelly, I wonder if she wants to pop on here and tell us a little bit about more about her boob history or her boob story.
It's my waiting room dance.
I was doing the same dance, except you couldn't see me. So I want to know where y'all were when I was growing up, because this would have been a game changer, I think, to hear these stories and know that no matter what size you were, there was something that just you were thinking or feeling about your boobs. And my story really starts when I was probably in second or third grade. I'd always been fat. Third grade, I have this very vivid memory of being in a ballet recital. I did dance for a number of years, and we were getting our costumes fitted. All the other girls have these cute little spaghetti strapped leotards and these beautiful skirts. We had Christmas lights in the skirts. It was this whole, ridiculous thing for a Park District dance. So I can't fit in the cute little leotard, and that's because of my boobs. This is third grade. So I had to get this ugly white leotard, these giant straps on them. And then it's so thin, you can see my nipples through the leotard. And so here I am. I can't have the same outfit as everybody else. And then I also am stuffing tissue in there to allow myself to not be right in front of everybody's faces on a stage with bright lights. After that, it was pretty much the same story. Anytime I was doing any sort of activity that required a uniform, it wasn't fitting on top. And so there are so many experiences that I think about with like things didn't fit. And sometimes it's because I'm fat. Most of the time it's because my boobs are too big to fit in the outfit. And then I remember too, in middle school, most of the shirts I wore showed off my boobs because that's how things were cut. That's how things fit. And people would take advantage of that. One, you'd get in trouble because your shirt's too low, to this, to that, to the other thing. And it's like, well, I literally can't help that. But two, this happened with a lot of boys that I would spend time with. They would make games out of my boobs. So like, can I get this paper wad in there? You know, can I do this? Can I do that? And it's like, it was funny, or was it? Like I laughed. Exactly. I laughed because it's like I felt like that's what I had to do. Maybe this is funny, but really it's not. It's awful. Like somebody is really treating you like you're this object. And yet I didn't have the language to talk about it. I didn't have the capacity to like understand that until I was older. I, like Kati, bra all the time. I can't go without because my boobs are so heavy. And I have learned, like, I teach yoga, I do yoga. My practice is pretty intense. I learned I can't wear like those industrial, like keep them all in, you know, keep it together bras. I'm buying the $5 bra at Target or Walmart that has zero support, that my boobs look terrible in, but you know what? I can move them around. Like I'm not choking on my boobs because I can get them out of the way. The first time I tried to do an inversion with a wired bra, I poked my eye out with the wire. And so I was like, you know, we're not going to do that anymore. And I've been much happier since. I'm like, I don't care what it looks like. I had a teacher who said to me, she's like, there's only like 3 of us in this class. You could just take your bra off if you want, if that's going to be an issue. And I said, you know, I appreciate it, but I think it'd actually be worse if my bra was off, because then we're going to fly everywhere. I've gotten older. I accept my boobs as they are, but still it's a nonstop. Like there are places, and I'm not going to name names, but there's this particular bra outlet that always talks about how they're so inclusive in their sizing. And I go look at their sizing. I'm like, you're not anywhere near inclusive. I don't know like what inclusive is to you, but this is not realistic. And I say that not just as somebody with big boobs, but I know plenty of folks with small boobs who same thing, you know, the way that these manufacturers have created these bras, it's so limited. And I think that makes so many of us feel really terrible because we don't fit in these bras, when really it's these places aren't doing their job to offer as much range as they possibly can and that fit actual human bodies.
I'm copying you.
That's what I'm talking about, Nick. That was like, we should do the wave. I'll start, Nick. I'll start.
Are we in the same order though?
Oh, are we?
I don't know if you're all in the same order on the screen. I'm back. I think I just got popped back in and Kelly got pulled out. Thank you all for sharing those amazing stories we have. For our last few minutes, we wanted to take some questions, and we have some good ones from the audience that anyone can jump in and answer. I'll start with this one. There's 2, actually. Actually, maybe I'll throw them both out because they kind of work together to me. One of the questions is, what are some ways we can speak to ourselves and our children to be more positive about our bodies? And the other one that 2 people asked, we're interested in, they work, both of them work with middle school girls in particular who struggle horribly with body image and are asking for resources. So both for, I guess, in theory, resources and ideas about teaching body positivity to children and teens. which in many ways, I think doing this work a lot is the same, just some content a little more mature than others. But what do you all have for resources or ideas, ways that you speak to your own children, or if you work or write for children or young adults about body image or things that have helped you?
I can jump in. I think that for the younger age set, of course, there's like so much out there that can be read and consumed. But I think that for so many of us, that am I echoing? Am I okay? Or is that just me? Am I making it up? Okay, thanks. I think that for so many of us, our very first steps and realizations and learning about body positivity and fat positivity was exposing ourselves to people who looked like us and people who looked different than us. So I think that like with younger, especially like middle school kids, you have to think about like, what are the things that are like on this constant highway to their brain? What are they constantly seeing? Well, they're probably following the same like pretty 5 white girls who are doing TikTok dances. And so they need to like, you need to help them diversify that in some way and expand their content in some way. So whether you're just like, sharing with them someone cool you follow on Instagram, or you're, like showing them a book or something like that. Like, I think that that's, the biggest light bulb moment for me really early on was seeing people who looked like me and me thinking to myself, oh my God, that person is hot as hell. And then having this moment that happens a little bit later on down the line when I realized like, I don't look that different than that person. And of course, like, hotness, prettiness, all that stuff is like irrelevant in many ways, but it's something that you have to like grasp onto for that first step. Like you have to find some kind of value in yourself to make that first step, and seeing people who look like you is a really big, thing.
I can jump in if it's okay. Like for me, I don't have kids or anything, but I do have nephews. So like for me, the middle one, he's getting like a little chubbier or whatever, and his mom tells me he's been insecure lately because he's growing. He's like 8, but he's a big 8, like a tall 8. So like I've been, especially this summer since we're quarantined, they've stayed here and stuff, and I tried to set that example for them. Like if we're going to the beach or the pool, I'm gonna take my shirt off so he can feel comfortable, because they see like, oh, he's bigger, bigger than me, but he's fine going swimming with his shirt off. And he's been insecure, and I try to set the example, within my personal life, like I am with him, or on my social media or whatever, but also surrounding myself with people that look like me, because it helps me too, to be that to other people. So I think it's important, like, especially I get a lot of teens that message me or DM me, like, thank you, like, you don't know who you're reaching out just by being yourself. Something so simple as being shirtless and showing your man boobs. Some people might sexualize it, but like it might be sexualized in a certain extent, but 90% of the time you're helping someone by simply just being shirtless and just being yourself, because that's something so small like that is a big insecurity in people's lives. So like me having big man boobs, and people might look like me, guys or whoever, women, they relate to you, and they say thank you for doing that, because we don't have anyone that looks like us. So like Julie was saying, it's good to have, for us especially, there are figures that we also try to exude that, so people can have that, have it normalized the same way we have normalized on our feeds these guys with abs and their Calvin Kleins. Then we can do it too, so people can have that visual, like, oh, I'm okay at the way I look, the way I look.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in.
Sorry for jumping in, but I wanted to say one thing, in that so much of the way I thought about my body was influenced by the women around me and how they thought about their bodies and how they verbalized that. So I remember from a very early age in middle school hearing all my teachers talking about dieting, like how they couldn't stand the way they looked, like my mom like shitting on her own body, like things like that. And so like I had a high school teacher, a drama teacher, that like she hated her fat body so much that she, in a way, was really aggressive towards me and made me hate my own body because of how she treated me, because of the things of herself that she saw in me. So I think that that's another thing that I would just add, is to just be really aware of what you're saying and doing in front of your students.
I am so happy that you said that, because I was going to touch on it a little bit. So I've actually had this long adventure with my body, not just food, but realizing the things I can change and can't. Like, for example, skin tone. I remember I realized at like a young age I couldn't change it. I was Black, and I also could not control what I'm eating to make myself gain any weight when people called me skinny. And I was definitely one of the college kids who were like, "Oh, did you gain the freshman 15?" No, because I couldn't really get it. But once I left college, my body was doing all these random things. And one of the grateful things I had in my life was working on an account. I work in pharmaceutical advertising. I worked on an account where the drug was to help women who had this thyroid disease, and that thyroid disease made them gain weight. And so this opened my world to weight could come from diseases, weight can come from eating, it can come because of genetics, etc., etc. So I always had friends who had different body types. That was not like a new thing to me, but just the perspective of how their body could be influenced. So I always focus on making my body strong as an athlete, but I'm just ignoring everything else, like, because diseases can get to you, and things can happen. Or I don't know, like right now we're in quarantine. Like, I'm not training. I just had a baby. I'm hardly sleeping. Things are happening to my body because of it. But I always know it's the only one I have. I have to appreciate it. I have to respect it. It's going to help me through life. So I don't abuse it. And I just want every kid to know to love himself no matter what, like, because we didn't choose the ones that we got here with. And I have to talk a little bit about my husband, because my husband, he's also an athlete, but he is in pain every day because he had all these surgeries, and people don't realize that. Like, so there's people with chronic pain that you aren't aware of. There are people with who are skinny who probably have diseases. So once we're looking at other people and like we want to be like them, but you don't know what they're going in behind closed doors. So again, as you mentioned earlier about my bio, I'm an ultra runner. I have friends who are super skinny ultra runner, and I have a favorite one. Her name is the Myrna Veda. She wrote a book called A Beautiful Work in Progress. And you look at her, you never think she's an ultra runner, because she is, and she calls herself a fat ultra runner. She definitely is. Like, you would never look at her and think that she's an ultra runner. And I love people like that, because they defy all odds. And so you look at this woman who, like, wait, she's an ultra runner? Yes, she has run over 50 miles. Yes, she can run over 60 miles. So yes, just I'm agreeing with Julie. Surround yourself with people who don't look like you. And I'm actually, since I grew up in a culture where women do that to each other, like, they keep comparing themselves. And since I have a daughter now, I actually told my mom, watch the certain things that you say, like, because I mean, I grew up around her, but it's like, we can't help it because society conditioned us that way. But I have to remind her, like, yes, she's beautiful. Yes, that's fine. But I don't want her to compare herself to each other, what type of hair she has, what kind of skin tone she has. And my daughter's interracial. So a lot of my friends have been going like, oh, she looks like you, or she looks like the father. I'm like, yeah, we're related. Like, I did give birth to her, but like, that's not what the focus should be on. I just want her to be a strong woman, and I want her to love people and appreciate them for who they are. And again, in my bio, you talked about that I focus on accessibility. I surround myself with people who don't have the lifestyle that I do. I have friends who are deaf. I have friends who are vision impaired. I have people who are mobility impaired. So, like, you need to have all these different people in the room to make a very inclusive world. And that's what I'm used to like. And again, I said, my husband is in chronic pain every day. He looks like a normal person. So, like, just defy that odd, or defy what normal is. And that's what I would suggest to help our kids be more inclusive.
I'll jump in here. I think there's something really powerful and positive about complimenting other people. It actually takes a pretty high level of vulnerability to compliment someone else and to appreciate the way that someone else presents himself to the world. And telling someone else that they're beautiful is a way that you come to grips with the beauty that you also have in a way. So, you know, I'm big on, especially when it comes to other women, like I'm super big on complimenting other women and like, oh girl, you look good. You know, like there's this power in that kind of positivity. So like when I'm interacting, I have a number of young mentees and I get on them when they tear each other down. And it's like, I want you guys to find something positive to say about each other and do a better job of not perpetuating kind of the terrible things that we say and think and feel about other people's bodies by falling into them and using them to kind of prop yourself up. So utilizing compliments, I think, is a huge way to honestly become more accepting of your own body and your own self.
I think one of the things when we found out we were having children that were probably maybe going to identify as girls, and currently they do, I made it very clear that I personally was not going to use some words that I grew up hearing. I can remember I was 8 when I was diagnosed, and I weighed about 36 pounds when I was on treatment because that's what chemo does to your body. And I remember telling my mom, look, I'm finally skinny. I wasn't skinny, I was malnourished. And I wanted desperately to be skinny. And I even remember through high school, like my New Year's resolution one year was to be a waif because it was the late 90s and that's what we all wanted to be, was ultra skinny. And so I refused to use that word in my house. I don't talk about dieting like Julie was saying. I heard my mom talk about dieting. I heard teachers talk about dieting. Every woman in my life dieted. And I don't, that's not something, we talk about how food nourishes, you know, and if you want a cupcake, eat a cupcake. Like there's nothing wrong with, you know, like all of those things. And so I think it's reframing a lot of the ways that we were taught, reframing it and trying to find ways to be honest about it. And also, like everybody else has said, like surround yourself with different people. My girls are really into this thing called Gotcha Club. They love it and they make little characters with it all the time. And a new version just came out this week and it was a very big deal because they could take off limbs and they could give the characters crutches. And my kids were like, look, Mom, that looks like you. And so they were so excited that they could do that. And they can make these pictures, I don't know, these characters look like different types of people. And so I think we just need to keep surrounding our children with that. And it's got to be bigger than just like in our communities. Like we all know this, like it needs to be within television and movies and pop culture and just in our media, like it was in the 90s with all those little waif girls. We need all of the body. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of the best ways that we can help. I have girls, so I tried really hard to not talk about how pretty they are. I try, you know, and I think they are. They're my kids. They look like me. Of course, they're gorgeous. But I also, you know, we always try to talk about my oldest is a great animator and a great drawer. So we try to talk about those things instead. And I think we just need to work on that in general. Because my body is often looked at as something that you should never want. Mm-hmm. And so my body is great. It does exactly what I need it to do every day. And I want my kids to see that. And so that's what I think.
You all just gave some amazing tips to these people and answers to these questions about how to raise and be advocates for body positive kids and teens, both as a parent or just a human being or an educator or an artist, including all of these things, right? Like exposing ourselves in media and in real life to bodies that look like ours can be really powerful. But in addition to that, ones that don't look like ours, right? Because it's important to see the diversity in bodies. This panel is a great example of that. Also to speak positively about our own bodies and show up in our bodies as in a positive way, right? Like living our lives, our best lives in the body we have right now, and being careful of our words and our language came up. Lots of good ideas that you talked about that we could also talk about all day regarding healthism and this country and our culture and health and also food, having a positive relationship with food and sharing that in our lives and in our work is really powerful and important. And we talked a little bit, some of you, about media and representation, not only in real life, but in social media, right? Like following diversity of people and people who look like you can be both really important and empowering for young people, in particular, probably teens, not so much little kids, but with little ones. Other things too, like books and music and film, even in things like Disney films, right? Like dissecting the characters and what they're doing. There's some great newer Disney films that I always like to recommend to parents and other people who ask for resources. That's often a great way to teach little kids. You know, storybooks and movies can be important for all of us. And luckily, we have many of you who are contributing to that landscape and those art forms in such great ways. And many of you and us are in Kelly's new book here, which is why we're all here tonight. We're wrapping up. These were some great questions, and we kind of basically got to all of them. There were a couple that we didn't have time to, but we're out of time. But I did say that I run a body positive or a body image camp for girls ages 10 to 12 and for older girls too, ages 13 to 15. And I use Kelly's other book on feminism for the real world. And I'm excited to dive into this one and possibly use this for my camps and classes for girls. Those librarians and educators out there, of course, many of the people on this panel have amazing books that you should have in your library collection if you don't already. And then, of course, this one would be a great addition to that because I also think books have changed my life and all of our lives and continue to do so in a number of ways. We are out of time. We're a little bit over our 7 o'clock time limit because I'm saying 7 because I'm on Mountain Standard Time in Idaho. But I know the rest of you are elsewhere. We had an hour time limit. And we're over it and we're done. I understand that Charis Books, thank you so much for hosting this and being
thank you so much.
This platform and bringing us all together, and Kelly as well. I understand they will be archiving this event and adding closed captioning as soon as possible after this is aired, so that it will be accessible for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Thank you so much to everyone for coming, and thank you to the panelists. It was so nice to be in a room with you across the country for a while. And you can follow all of us on social media. I think we all use it, Instagram, Facebook, and other websites and other things for making positive change in the world, in particular around bodies and diversity of experiences. So please follow us on Instagram and elsewhere. Thank you, everyone, for coming and participating. Thank you for all of your time and for watching.
Back once more. Is that what it says? Yeah. Thanks.
This is such a great book. And Julie, I did read your story.
Thank you. I'm on a deadline. I haven't read anything in a very long time.
Yeah, I'm going through audiobooks, actually.
Oh, thank you. Are we waiting for Kelly? Are we done?
It was nice meeting you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll add for the folks who were asking the questions about, you know, how to cultivate body positivity, follow everybody who is on this call. Like, incredible voices, incredible folks. And once you start following some people, you go down a rabbit hole and you just find people who really and truly change your perspective on things. So thank you all so much for being on this panel, and thank you to everybody who joined, and thank you to Charis Books for hosting us.
Congratulations, Chloe.
Thank you.
Thank you.